Late at night, in a dark, silent room, an old man sits huddled over a flickering hearth, frantically throwing years of handwritten manuscripts into the flames. To the rest of the world, he is Sir Isaac Newton, the greatest mind in human history, the titan who unlocked gravity, calculus, and optics. But to himself, he's a man surrounded by enemies, guarding dangerous secrets that could destroy his legacy forever. We are taught to remember Newton as a calm, logical genius sitting peacefully under an apple tree. But the real story of Isaac Newton is far darker, far stranger, and far more violent than any school textbook ever let on. He was a paranoid recluse who spent years practicing illegal alchemy. His life began on a cold, bitter Christmas morning in 1642 at Woolsthorpe Manor in rural England. Born prematurely after his father had already died, baby Isaac was so tiny and fragile that no one expected him to survive the night. When he was just 3 years old, his mother abandoned him to live with a wealthy new husband, leaving young Isaac in the care of his grandmother. The bitter trauma of that early abandonment never left him, transforming into a deep, lifelong paranoia. As a boy, he was quiet, vengeful, and obsessed with mechanical gadgets, carving sundials into stone walls and building intricate working windmills powered by trapped mice. When he threatened in an angry notebook entry to burn his stepfather's house down with his mother inside, his family tried to force him to become a humble farmer. But Isaac let the sheep stray into neighbors' fields while he hid under trees reading books, recognizing his fierce intellect. His uncle helped send him to Trinity College, Cambridge, in 1661. But Newton arrived not as a privileged scholar, but as a subsizer, a poor servant student forced to clean shoes, carry meals, and empty chamber pots for wealthy aristocratic classmates to pay for his tuition. Humiliated by his peers, Newton channeled his resentment into relentless study, devouring the works of Descartes, Galileo, and Kepler late into the night. Then, in the summer of 1665, disaster struck England as the Great Plague tore through London, painting red crosses on infected doors and leaving thousands dead in the streets. Cambridge closed its doors, and the 22-year-old servant student was sent back home to Woolsthorpe in forced isolation. What followed was what historians call the Annus Mirabilis, the Year of Miracles. Sitting alone in his country farmhouse, disconnected from the world, Newton experienced an unprecedented explosion of human genius. In a matter of months, he invented fluxions, what we now call calculus do, the changing speed of moving objects. Curious about the true nature of light, he sealed himself in a pitch-black room, bored a tiny hole in his shutter, and watched a single ray of sunlight pass through a glass prism, proving that white light was actually composed of a vivid rainbow of colors. To test how the curvature of the human eye affects color perception, he recklessly shoved a blunt metal needle, called a bodkin, between his bone and his eyeball, pressing until he saw red and blue circles floating in the dark. And then came the moment that changed physics forever. While sitting in his garden, he watched an apple drop straight to the ground and realized that the very same invisible force pulling the apple down was holding the moon in its orbit around our world. Returning to Cambridge after the plague subsided, his brilliant work earned him the prestigious Lucasian Professorship of Mathematics at just 26 years old. He invented the world's first reflecting telescope using curved brass mirrors, presenting it to the Royal Society of London and astounding the scientific elite. But fame brought toxic rivalries. The Royal Society's arrogant curator of experiments, Robert Hooke, publicly accused Newton of stealing his ideas, sparking a venomous war of words that drove the deeply paranoid Newton into total seclusion. Retreating behind locked doors, Newton abandoned conventional science for over a decade, diving headfirst into the dark world of secret alchemy and occult studies. Working late into the night in a smoke-filled basement laboratory, he boiled strange metallic mixtures, translated the hermetic emerald tablet, and regularly tasted dangerous chemicals like antimony and mercury, slowly poisoning his own body and mind. At the same time, he secretly wrote radical theological papers denying the Holy Trinity heretical thoughts that could have seen him stripped of his title and imprisoned if exposed. Newton's groundbreaking physics might have been lost to history forever, if not for a young astronomer, Edmund Halley, who rode to Cambridge in 1684 to ask Newton what shape planetary orbits followed. When Newton instantly answered an ellipse, but couldn't find the paper where he had proved it, Halley urged him to reconstruct the math. For 18 grueling months, Newton barely ate or slept, possessed by a single-minded fury, until he produced his crowning masterpiece, the Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. When the Royal Society ran out of money, Halley paid for its printing out of his own pocket. Published in 1687, the Principia laid out the three fundamental laws of motion and the law of universal gravitation, completely revolutionizing how humanity understood the cosmos. But the victory was bitter. Robert Hooke immediately claimed Newton had stolen the inverse square law from him, triggering a fresh wave of vicious disputes that pushed Newton to the absolute brink. By 1693, battered by relentless overwork, toxic mercury poisoning, and intense isolation, -1-year-old Isaac Newton suffered a catastrophic mental breakdown, experiencing terrifying hallucinations and writing wild, incoherent accusations to his few remaining friends. Seeking a clean break from academia after recovering, Newton abandoned Cambridge in 1696 to become the warden of the Royal Mint in London. While others assumed it was an easy retirement position, Newton took his duties with terrifying seriousness, discovering that a fifth of all British coins in circulation were fake counterfeits, threatening to collapse the empire's economy. Newton transformed himself into a relentless detective, donning disguises to patrol dark London taverns, recruiting underground informants, and tracking down his arch-nemesis, the brilliant master counterfeiter William Chaloner. Newton built an airtight treason case against Chaloner, cold-heartedly watching from a carriage window as the criminal was sent to the gallows at Tyburn. Following Hooke's death in 1703, Newton was elected president of the Royal Society, where he ruthlessly ordered every portrait and instrument belonging to his dead rival removed and destroyed, effectively erasing Hooke from history. In 1705, Queen knighted him at Trinity College, making him the first scientist in history to receive such an honor. In his final years, the elderly Sir Isaac Newton remained remarkably humble about his achievements, famously remarking that he felt like a young boy playing on the seashore, diverting himself by finding a smoother pebble, while a great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before him. When he passed away peacefully at age 84 in March 1727, he was granted a majestic state funeral and buried in Westminster Abbey among kings and queens. Today, every satellite orbiting our planet, every rocket launched into deep space, and our fundamental understanding of physical reality upon the equations drawn by a paranoid, solitary outcast in a candlelit room centuries ago. Isaac Newton was far from a perfect hero, but he was the mad genius who cracked the code of the cosmos and forever unlocked the universe.